And we, as we normally do, get into the youth perspective at this hour on Friday. And there's so much happening. And of course, we talk about how, the word youth and, has been thrown about without us really realizing what it is that we do. So having those conversations necessary for us to do. And as we get into a final conversation this week on The Situation Room, Francis Joroge, Head of Public Policy, IC Law LLP, you'll tell us what that is in just a minute, as well as CPA Brian Nabiswa, who is a finance consultant, are in the hot seats of The Situation Room this morning. Gentlemen, good morning both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Sante.
We're looking into these conversations. There are many things that have been happening in rapid succession over the last 24 to 12 months. And we're going to go into some of those and look at the place where the country is today. Before we do that, Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb from Uganda. And we would like to hear a perspective on that.
Yes, Uganda, also known as the Pearl of Africa. And it is a country with many firsts. It is a country that harbors over 50% of the world's gorillas, has Africa's largest mountain ranges, which is the Rwenzori. I know that because for a fact I was in a Rwenzori dome in Anderson's High School in Eldoret. But then again, also it has rich biodiversity. Talk about their big five and whatnot. They are there. And it's also a source of River Nile. So you would say countries like Egypt, which depend on River Nile, equally depend on Uganda to take care of the source of River Nile. And our proverb today: a bird will always use the feathers of another bird to build its nest. A bird will always use the feathers of another bird to build its nest. Tunaanza na wakili. What do you make of that?
Thank you, Dennis and Lou, for welcoming me today. I think when you say a bird will use the feathers of another bird to build its nest, it's about that you cannot do everything on your own. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, you require some form of help or assistance from another person or a colleague, and this is why it's important to mix synergies where you cannot complete a task on your own. That's what I think it means.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Andu and Dennis. And I'm happy this morning to make my debut on the Situation Room. About the proverb, to me, it's all about teamwork. And a bird needing another bird's feather to make a nest. It's all about we as the people. We need one another for us to prosper in whatever we do.
There you go. Yeah. You need somebody else. You can't do it alone. That maybe what somebody doesn't have use for at this time, or even if somebody would give a little bit of their self, it goes towards a good goal, and we can actually take advantage of that in a good way, of course. Mm-hmm. All right. So the word youth has been used by progressive, non-progressive governments for the longest time. And the huge responsibility, whether it is on productivity or whether it is on growing the economy, huge responsibility have been put on the shoulders of this age demographic for the longest time. Now, when we want to domicile things in Kenya for the purposes of this conversation, the youth has now almost been a buzzword. It's like, okay, we need to do something. And while we're making, considerations for this thing, we must throw in youth, because if we don't, then we will not be on the right side of ring. See where I'm going? It has become a thing whereby we say, okay, we've created this menu, but if we don't put youth into it, then it's not going to be worth it. So let's throw in youth without realizing what exactly it is that we are saying. Until last year, whereby this large percentage of the population was directly involved in what was going to be governance and how you were going to shape it moving forward. And I'm talking about the anti-finance bill protests that took place. The majority of those who were seen on the street were young people. This number that we are being told about, 70% of Kenya's population being between the age of 18 and 35, etc., even some cases going up until 45, then was front and center in the reality of governance. And then the conversation was, hang on, we can't just talk about them as though they're a number over here. We have to involve them in the conversations that we have towards governance. We saw this happen. But at the same time, in some areas, they're being seen as a nuisance. But we can't do that because we are looking at an all-encompassing population for which governance must be guaranteed, for which a growth of the economy must be taken into consideration, and for which conversations going into the future must be had. So, when we talk about the youth voice, are we still talking about something that's over there in the corner, Or have we gotten to the point whereby it's the one that has to lead the conversation? Wakili, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much once again. Just want to mention something that it's quite a big coincidence that you have mentioned today. You spoke about I&M Foundation, and I was part of the beneficiaries a few years ago, and they paid for all my undergraduate fees.
There you go.
Yeah, so when you talk about the youth, you start with the people who are making an impact in the lives of the youth in Kenya.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so going into the political landscape, we have seen 2 years ago, I worked for an international organization. At the time, the only country that people thought there'll be a problem with the youth is Uganda, because Uganda has the youngest youth population. I think the average age of a Ugandan is around maybe 23, 24, as compared to the rest of the world, whereby you'll find the youth averagely at 27, 28. So every international organization was saying there might be a problem in Uganda in a few years because of this young population that is not working, that is not being utilized. So no one ever thought that the problem will be in Kenya. But for us, we don't think of it as a problem. We think of it as a very good thing that Kenyans stood up and said, okay, we are tired of what is happening, and we want something, we want a change. And last year I was on this show, I think during Moi Day, and I remember saying that all of us should be part of this uprising, because there's no difference, there's no different constituency called the youth. I think the youth is part of our daily lives. Everyone has a young child. Everyone has a 23, 24-year-old relative who is at home with no job, probably has not completed school because help is not available, probably will not complete even the basic education because the education system right now is in a mess. So I've never accepted the reality that there is a different constituency that the government needs to take care differently, called the youth. Because when you look at the budget that was read yesterday, when you speak about the main things that the government was considering, agriculture, security, foreign affairs, how does the youth get into that? What aspect of those things of the mainstream do we take care of the youth concerns? Yeah.
And you see, when you talk about conversations around the youth as well, the protest June 25th has been seen as it's a youth movement. It is the Gen Z who are pushing it. I've always maintained that it is Kenyans who are pushing that agenda because it is part of the demography. But yes, while we pay homage to the young people for pushing that, there is the aspect of being involved. There's a question of being at the table. There's a conversation of being listened to and not just being seen, because for a very long time the youth card has been a box where people tick and say voila, affirmative action has taken place. Even as we talk about the budget making process that is ongoing, as much as the youth, the Gen Z is pushed for the finance bill to be thrown out, we see that even this year, still the youth, even when they come up with the ideas on public participation, what happens? You get arrested, you're thrown in because you're making a certain system by parliament crash. So then how do the youth then become part of the process if at every given opportunity there are hurdles?
I think, going by the saying that even over 65% of the Kenyan population now being the youth. So it means that this is the largest composition of the Kenyan population. So when the government or the agencies are pushing to serve the people, they have to remember that we have this particular group that is the youth. Now, if this group is not being served, it means that now the country and the entire population has a problem. Now, looking at going by actually the message that was sent last year, basically around June, the conversation was the majority of the Kenyan population were pushing for a particular conversation in the country, and the conversation were demanding for the better governance, and that better governance was calling for service to this larger part of the Kenyan population, that is even the youths. And the concerns were, and even they are still there, because up to now we feel like this is a group that send a message to those responsible organs that there is a problem in the country. But up to now, we still feel that there is little which has been done. The greatest of it was the issue about the employment. The high level of unemployment among this large part of the Kenyan population, which is not unemployed. And we can see how it has a lot of impacts on this larger part of the Kenyan population. Now, we are having a lot of youths who have mental issues. And you look at these mental issues, they're about... It's all about these youths asking themselves, what next? Because the Kenyan system, we have been given free education. Okay, looking at the age bracket. Look at this age bracket of the youths who are on the streets. A good number of them, they are the youths who are given free education by former President Kibaki. They have finished school. Now, after finishing school, what next for these 75% of the people? Now, they have come out of the school. They realize that there is nothing they can do. There is nothing for them to do. There is no employment. They have no hope going into the future. Speak of the medical sphere, very poor. So there is no hope. So the kind of depression that these youths had and their feeling was so enormous. So that's why now we ended up pushing for this agenda, which is not yet made. Now, as Ndu put it when we started, there is nothing which comes in place without getting the youths into the conversation. Look at the politician. When during the time of campaigns, it's all about the youths, morning to evening. Look at how this government came in place. It was all about the youths, creating employment, creating, improving education system for the young people. But at the end of the day, when they're in place, they forgot about this population. So the youths of this country, as we speak, it is a neglected group, totally. Starting from the policies, going to the implementation stage of the country's governance and all spheres that our leaders do.
Okay, so we also saw the call for youth inclusive governance. That you're saying, okay, going forward, then there need to be younger people on the table. The question is that what we are looking for? To have a younger demographic of the makeup of leadership? Or are we saying that what you need to do for whomever is in leadership over there, you have to take into consideration this large number of people for which you're not making these provisions like you speak about? Like you speak about, Nabiswa, you speak about unemployment, you speak about access to opportunity and access to credit, such like things. So, Wakili, are we saying include the youth insofar as the opportunities that you provide for them? Or are we saying include them in your leadership and governance portfolio so that we can have these issues addressed? Which one is it? Or is it a combination of the two?
I think for me it's simple. Any person who wants to vie for public office, the only thing that you need to do is to respect and obey the Constitution. The Constitution has given you the roadmap on what is required to do. And one of them is Article 10. Article 10 talks about inclusivity in public governance. If you look at the principles under Article 201, principles of public finance, it talks about openness and accountability. When you respect those principles, there is no way you'll have a dilemma on what you are required to do as a public servant or a state officer with regards to this population called the youth. I can give you an example. There's the president in his call for broad-based government appointed Jacob Fikirini as a principal secretary, I think, of youth or something. And he's I think standard, he's a young guy, and I think he's maybe below 30. The job required, I think, 10 years of experience for him to even qualify to be shortlisted. So it's a good thing that he's on the table, but does that help the youth really? I don't think so. I think for you to include the youth to the table, it means including them in the decision-making process, not just appointing one representative or bringing Samuel to an organization. It's about when I want to make the budget, how is this budget inclusive of the issues that the youth care about? What we are seeing and what we'll continue to see in the next few years is if you want to make a certain population happy, you set aside a fund for them. So you have a youth fund. You put maybe 1 billion shillings, and then it goes down, it is dispersed, it disappears with some of the beneficiary. The next year you say this thing is unsustainable, let's get rid of it. The other year you bring a fund for women. You say, okay, this fund, we need to buy some tents, we need to talk about femicide, and then the next year you decide this thing is unsustainable. It has become a game, and it will continue to become a game until the point whereby we tell the politicians, you need to start respecting the constitution. One of the things I've always talked about is the judiciary becoming what do you call it? Part of this game. One of the things that happened when this government came into power was that there are people who went to court to challenge the Hustler Fund, and until today that case has not been heard. So one of the things that people have challenged the Hustler Fund for is that the fund is unsustainable. And we are basically 1,000 days after the president was sworn in, and we have seen 5 billion has been lost. Basically, the president has lost 5 billion. If that was a private organization, that man will have been flogged in public. So the question that the president is coming up with a fund for everything that he discovers the youth are suffering from. Tomorrow there'll be a fund for rehab. The other day there'll be a fund for something. That is basically playing games with Kenyans.
And you see, we talk about solutions and the funds that are being put in place and whatnot, yet we recognize the fact that the country where we are at the moment, all that is needed is, because the president himself said we will invest more on what? Input, manufacturing and whatnot. And you look at what that would do to a population of the young people that, Brian, you say are unemployed, and that would open opportunities for young people to find a meaningful employment, because that is also one of the ticket items that Kenyans went to the streets to complain about. But as we sit today, it is a Hustler Fund. Questions around it, like you've rightfully said, the matter is still in court, and 5 billion is lost. Young people pushing for proper accountability, and no one really seems to care. So in terms of political goodwill in ensuring that the constitution is respected, what will it take from an eye of a young person?
Okay, looking at the workability of the constitution and the policies are there in this country, when you look at it closely, sometimes we tend to agree that all the policies and even the constitution we have, sometimes it's just good on paper, because implementation has always been a problem. So even the youth bracket, if you look at the constitution itself, sometimes I really struggle to identify the clause in the constitution which clearly talks about the youth issues to the fully, which the youths can cling on to demand what is right for them. Like even now, talk of if like the women, our mothers, have been given an opportunity that today they must be represented in all the 47 counties, where in those offices where the issues and rights can be defended. But now for us, the youths, today, it's all what we can, the only thing we cling on is the right to picket and go to the streets to demand for what is ours. Because you look at that article, is it 55, which talks about the youths, it only talks about the protection from harm, being given basic education. But now when it comes to demand to what belongs to the youth, that is service delivery in terms of being involved in leadership. Today, I cannot go and demand that the position of the youth in government or in cabinet has to be there. On which ground will I go to demand that one? It's not well stipulated, but we can only achieve that through picketing, through demonstration, or maybe presenting the petition. So we, the youths of this country, only there is no support from people who are in leadership, who ought to have protect us.
Do you think that the people in leadership who then stand at a potential risk of having their positions taken from them really are going to support the person who is a threat to the position?
And that has always been my thinking, that the people who are in leadership always feel that the youths of this country is a threat to them in terms of leadership, because they know if they give a youth an opportunity to get to the main table of decision making, they are seen, or they are actually a threat to them. That's why now they don't want to ensure that the youths get a chance to get to the decision-making table. They don't get that opportunities which will give them an empowerment to get where they want to be. So even looking at the time of politics, when in terms of campaigns, we don't have that clear framework or clear policies which will give the young people of this country an opportunity to get a leeway into elective posts, be it nominations, because when it comes to nomination, we only have maybe one position or two, but that grounds, the developed grounds where the youths can stand on and demand for their rights and go for whatever they need in this country is close to minimal. We comes to this issue of curbing the funding, campaign fundings. They know that is where now they beat the youths, because we know that the Kenyan youths, most of them are broke. They cannot run campaigns. So, and for them, they have an added advantage because they have resources. So when it's said that actually those who are in leadership already or in parliament to bring this policy to curb the campaign fundings and resources, they will not do that because they know if they bring a level playground, it's a big threat to them. Now, when we speak of the youth empowerment, for me, I don't feel like giving a youth a position to serve is enough. What the youth of this country need is full empowerment. Let there be, as currently there have been a conversation about digital highway. Let it be there. There have been a conversation about improving the youth fund. Because for me, I don't see the reason why we have a hustler fund, which is opaque, and diminish the youth fund, which should be there to empower the youths directly. So what actually should be there is give the Kenyan youth an opportunity rather than just appointment and leaving at that. Because when you give my friend in Njoroge a position, that is okay, it's a good thing because it shows goodwill that you are recognizing the youth, but that is not enough for us as the youth of the country.
Francis Njoroge is head of public policy at an IC Law LLP. And CPA Brian Nabiswa is a finance consultant, and our conversation around the youth perspective this hour is asking the questions. And it's just interesting because as we talk with Brian Nabiswa and Francis Njoroge, one of the questions that you say is that youth should be given, rather one of the things that you said, that you should be given these opportunities. Young people should be given these opportunities to then see what they'll be able to do, which could make sense. We have things like affirmative action, that without things like affirmative action, you will then not see people in particular positions. This happened with women. They said, give women a chance, where traditionally women were not in positions of leadership because, whatever, culture, tradition, whatever the case may be. And that's where the idea of affirmative action came. They said, if you don't force a situation, you're unlikely to see the benefits of it, because otherwise people are not going to make the choice, right? And so after affirmative action has taken place, you then are able to see, okay, you know what? This you have seen has happened. So leave some seats whereby women will then be able to fill them naturally, but then leave others up for elective post, right? And we're essentially saying that young people have something to offer. Younger people have something to offer towards governance, right? And leadership. But the likelihood of giving them an opportunity is going to be difficult because nobody's going to give up their spot, right? So should we see affirmative action then happen for youthful positions in the country? Should we?
Actually, that is my take personally. Just as you put it, we look at the history of this country, going back like, let's say 15 years ago or 10 years, 15, 20 years ago back, we could only find 2 or 3 women elected leaders in parliament. But after the new constitution dispensation, after we got the new constitution and created the position of 47 women representative, you can see currently we have over 6 governors just because they were given a chance through affirmative action. So that is what now we as the young people of this country are asking, that let us have that opportunity. You know, they say that we have to grab the opportunity. But the problem of this country, the moment now of trying to grab the opportunity, you are seen as rebels. We can see, just like what happened last year, we were looking for an opportunity to raise our voice for what was not going right in the country. But at the end of the day, you see the kind of force that the state agencies retaliated to curb us. So when we say that now let the youths of this country stand and push for it, it will not go well. So
how?
It is.
I want to hold you there. Okay. How will it not go well?
I'm just giving an example of what happened last year, because this category of the young people championing for the better governance of this country. We saw what happened, how the police forces tried to curb it, because the only opportunity, the only chance that this country, the young people have to push for their rights is through demonstration.
We also saw a situation where young people, having been given an opportunity to stand, then were also compromised and made decisions about which direction that they were going to go. So can those two sides share the same platform, when on one hand we are saying give people an opportunity, but on the other hand we're saying people then also get compromised when they get into the fold? How do we play the balance?
You see, just like I sometimes I like using a Swahili phrase which says that kwenye safari ya mamba hapakosi mburukenge. So you look at, youth have been given an opportunity to serve in this in some capacities, even if it's 1% or 2%. We have those who have done tremendously well, that we can say that give us an opportunity because so and so was given a chance and he has done well. We can look even in this country, look at the youngest, the young members of parliament. We have some who are doing well. We have some who are not doing well, a few who are not doing well. So taking an example of many who are doing well, now banking on that, we can say that when the young people of this country when they are given an opportunity, they can serve this country better. I always use an example of some of the members of parliament we have, like the former chair of budget, what he's doing in his constituency, Keharu. Look at Babu Wino, they are doing well. Even if we have some who we can say they have compromised their position given, those are few. But now, what we say is the personal responsibility of the young people when they are given a chance. Now, speaking of the young people, remember we are speaking of the largest population of this country.
Largest percentage.
Yes, the largest percentage of the Kenyan population. So we say that let them be given an opportunity. But for those who will not use that opportunity well, they have to be held accountable for their actions, which are, if they are not good, they have to be held accountable. But we cannot be judged when we have not been given fully opportunity to exercise what we have to do. Just like sometimes we try to take a case study from our other African countries. You see, like, we have African countries who have produced best leaders, and those leaders were given a chance at their youth league.
Like
Look
who?
at South Africa. South Africa, right now, the Secretary General of ANC was the leader of the youth league at some times back. Look at Nelson Malema. He was the chair of the youth league. And even if he has not tried and not gotten the chance to lead, but he has given a very good opposition, which is giving checks to the government. If we come back to our country, Kenya, at the time when the young people of this country were so vibrant, speak of the likes of James Orengo, speak of the likes of Raila Odinga and other leaders like former CJ Mtunga, actually, they were trying to get a chance and their voice were being heard, even if they received some brutality in that course. But they are the people we can say that if the youths are given a chance, they can do great things for the country.
Talking about the chance that you talk about, there is also the idea that power is never given. Power is taken.
Yes.
And the individuals that you talk about and the opportunities and chances that they are given, you look at the organization that went into them fighting for that space, which then brings the question in terms of the young people in the country, the youth, and the need to be organized and push the agenda is equally centered to making sure that the things that you're talking about in this room are actually fought for and received. Because as Ndu has rightfully said, those that are ruling the country, those that are in those positions of power, will not sit back and say, the youth have gone to the streets, Maze Shika. Yeah. That would never happen, which then brings about the conversation on 75% of the population, the young people. Power will not be given, it will be taken. Then how does the young people organize and plan to take that power back, Wakili?
I've never believed that power should be given at all. I've never believed in that theory. I think if you want something and you want it so bad, you will fight for it. You'll go to the streets and kneel down. I remember when the doctors were protesting last year that some of the intern doctors have not been posted. I went there. I went to the Ministry of Health to join them, and that is what you do when you believe in a cause. But if you're waiting for someone to throw down something to you, that is not the way to go as a Kenyan. I remember I was in a group of tech professionals in Kenya, and someone was advising that after the lady was arrested for creating a website, someone was advising, when you are creating a tech for supporting Kenyans, don't put your name on it, don't reveal your true identity. And I was strongly objecting to that. I was saying, if you are doing something good, if you are doing something reasonable to Kenyans, why should you hide your identity so that you protect yourself from the state? And one of the things we forget, the state has only two roles. One is to protect life, and another one is to protect property. The rest of the things that they do just comes secondary to those two roles. So when we are here today and we are in a situation whereby there is a life of a young man which has been lost and has been lost through the force of the state, then it means you have lost your first main role as a government. You do not have any other role or anything. So when it comes to the youth, how do those two roles of the state apply? Most of the young people do not have any property. They have not gotten to the place where they have bought even their first car. So as a state, your primary role should be protecting life. But what we are seeing today is that already, even without going deep into the newspaper, apart from the late Albert Ojwang, there's a lady who lost a child in Nyandarua, in a police cell. So if the state is going to tell us the police cell walls have killed these two lives, then we as the youth do not have an opportunity. Even we cannot even reach to the point where we're asking for leadership because we are not even alive. So my main point today is that if you're going for public office, if you're going to state office, just ensure that you can protect life and property. And how does it even apply to the presidency of William Ruto? And we had the budget, and one of the things I have a problem with the president is, yes, you have a nice budget, it's colorful, it's 4.2 trillion shillings, it looks really good, the numbers look very well, but how does it affect the common mwananchi? And I'll give you an example. There's a governor, I think, was it Samburu, a former governor of Samburu, who was arrested, and I think he was sentenced to jail, I think for around 30 years, for diverting the county funds to his own petrol station. But when it comes to the national budget, we don't care. We are like, the president can do whatever he wants. So for instance, if the president diverts, if there is a parastatal that is holding a hospitality gig and they decide to divert that money to the president's own hotel, why don't we speak about it at the same length we spoke about the governor? If the president decides to divert all the advertisements in all the media houses to his own national newspaper, why don't we talk about those things? I think it has reached a point we talk about the youth as if the youth are affected about different things from the rest of the community.
This is it.
And the truth is, we are affected by the same things you and I are affected by.
Absolutely. So the thing is that the question should be, should we be making a separation when we say, well, because there is a youth agenda and they have this unique thing? I dare say that unemployment, hunger, poverty, lack of infrastructure, lack of adequate medical resources, lack of a proper and efficient education system affects everybody. So, because we say that the largest percentage of a particular population, should it have the larger voice? Should we actually then, and these are the real conversations, should we sit and wait for these things to happen if we really do care about something enough? And this is where the examples of history come in, and we ask ourselves the questions. Kwame Nkrumah became Prime Minister of Ghana when he was 42. Thomas Sankara was a leader at the age of 33. Patrice Lumumba became Prime Minister when he was 34. Traore, that we're all shouting about today, is 37. Nobody is, everybody is in that bracket that we talk about. But interestingly enough, they didn't become leaders. They didn't wake up today and become leaders. They went through a struggle. So what does that mean? That these ages that we talk about, that they were much younger when they began. It was not rosy for them. They were thrown into jail countless times, threats upon their lives, all manner of things happened to them when they did that. Now, it is not the comparison in age and opportunity that we are talking about, but we are looking at the possibility. And that possibility is what shines the light to say that, we can do the thing, because the experiences of these gentlemen are etched in history forever. And that we say that there's something that they did that remains alive today. So the question is, how hungry are we to say that these things that affect the 90-year-old grandmother, grandfather is affecting the 3-year-old baby or the 5-year-old baby that we saw died yesterday, for example? These are examples that we're talking across board. So my question becomes, because we are saying that the larger percentage of the population is within a particular age demographic, do they bear the responsibility of being the loudest voice when it comes to getting things done? And that's a question for both of you. We'll start with you, Nabiso.
Yes. I sometimes look at our country. You look at other countries in our African setup. It has been all about goodwill. And this goodwill comes in place whereby those who are in the table, always they are focused about. It's like they don't think about who is not on the table. That is the problem. Because if we can speak about the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, we can speak of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Patrice Lumumba. You see, there existed some of the an amount of goodwill from their state. But
if anything, there was huge conflict.
Yeah.
There was huge opposition, and that is why their voices rose up. The people that they received any kind of goodwill from was the people on the other side, not the people who were in state.
Yes. Okay, that is my point. Both the people who are outside, like in this country, in the society, I know Njoroge will tell you, probably maybe he comes from a place which is, I can say, more a bit enlightened. Today, you go to a society where I come from. However good you do in terms of fighting for democracy, fighting for their rights in the society, but people will judge you by the age. How old are you? Are you able? Okay, the question is always, you are still young to lead from the community. At some point, they will tell you that wait, your time will come. So this is also the kind of goodwill I'm talking about. Sometimes we lack goodwill in terms of given an opportunity to get there. Also, we lack an opportunity from the ground we come from. We have a community where...
Or support, not opportunity.
Yes, support. We come from a community where if a young person goes for an elective post, people will not look at him on what he can deliver, what the agenda is. People will look at him in terms of age. Is he married or not? Does he have resources? So this is where the disconnect is. Now, the Kenyan setup, I dare say that the Kenyan setup, it's a society whereby people will judge you depending on your age, depending on the resources you have, depending on they'll not look at the wisdom and what you can achieve, what you can deliver. So this is the disconnect. So this is now where we call upon those people who have a chance to ensure that they can create an opportunity. The same way they did for affirmative action for our mothers, our Kenyan women, they can create an avenue, an environment for us to achieve what has never been achieved. And when we get that affirmative action as the youths being given an opportunity, I think Kenyans will be enlightened and say, oh, this is a group which we have been ignoring, and they can deliver, they can give something tangible to the country, Kenya. Now, there is a conversation which is always there, that power is taken. I can look in this country, our country, Kenya, I can look at it in two perspectives. We have a religious ground, and we can talk about the Kenyan ground. Now, on a religious ground, power is taken is whereby you showcase what you can do through struggle, and then at the end of it, you can take it. But now in the Kenyan setup, when someone says power is taken, it means that taking by force. Because we have seen instances where the Kenyan election has been rigged, and the conversation is power is taken. So it means you take by force through rigging, through all manner of dubious ways. So now if we say that the Kenyan youth to stand on the ground that power is taken, it becomes a problem, because one, you cannot take power in Kenya. That is taking through dubious means, by force, because you don't have resources to get those people who will assist you to get. So it's a good phrase that power is taken, but in the Kenyan setup, I don't think that it works.
Can't the youth take advantage of the numbers that they have and finally say, because of the numbers that we have, because we are the majority, and therefore, whether we like it or not, we are taking this power? We're not saying through extra constitutional means, but taking advantage of the numbers that are there, the youth to organize themselves and say, we are taking this power because we've tried to push the normal way. It is not working. And the only way for some sense to get in is for us to go for these elective positions and ensure that we take power. Is that something that can be done in this country?
My colleague here is saying power cannot be taken, and I'm asking why not? Why not? Yeah, asking the president to resign is not an extra constitutional means. Yeah. It is something contemplated under the constitution, that at some point you can get tired of the man and tell him, you do not make sense at all, so go home, go back to Sugoi. And for a fact, I'm not from an enlightened place, I'm from Eldoret, which is
homeboy.
Okay. I'm part of the constituency that voted for the president, so it means I'm also suffering from something. Yeah, so one of the things, and Ndo pointed it out, is there's something we call policy incoherence in government. And when my friend here speaks about free education, I think you have hosted so many panelists who have spoken to you and told you free education is just a mirage. It's just a name. If you dig down and you realize the amount of contribution the country gives to education is very minimal. For instance, I think I visited a school here in Isili, and the amount the school is given by government per child for the staff, what do you call them? The non-teaching staff, is 6 shillings per child for a whole year. The government contributes 6 shillings for every child to pay non-teaching staff. So when you dig deeper, everything that the government tells you that they have done is such a mirage. So another issue you look at that is quite affecting the youth, and which is being used as a tool to pull the youth towards the government, is housing. So this government is telling you, we cannot afford to build a road from Nairobi to Nakuru. It has not even gotten to 300 kilometers. The government is telling you, we cannot do that. We need private financing. We need to toll that road for us to make money. But the same government comes to you on the other hand and tells you, okay, we can afford to build you a house, we can afford to build you markets, we can afford to do all these other things. So you're asking them, why do you have such a policy incoherence that, one, you cannot do your job, but you want to do our job for us, and you'll do it better than us? So I think we have a very confused government, and the youth went to the streets last year not because they were dissatisfied with the government at large. It's because the government was not making sense, and it's a good thing to tell the government, you are not making sense, let us help you to make sense for you. So I don't think we should sit down and wait for the government to tell us that it's our time to take power. I think the youth should go back to the streets. That's the only cure to this problem.
You know, the average age of a member of parliament today is 48 years old. You know, that goes to tell you that individuals who are there are relatively just off the youth bracket, and the only thing is the decisions that have been made on a personal level have not gone into helping the situation even better. Perhaps it's a conversation on being organized, being intentional, and changing the situation, because if the youth don't do it for themselves, who's going to do it?
You see, the problem is, you know, the amount of, let me put it this way, the level of poverty among the youths, the Kenyan youths, is so high, such that during the electioneering period, whereby actually the youths have a chance, they have an opportunity to say that we can stand for our own because we are the majority. But the problem is, now these youths will turn up going for the candidate who is the highest bidder. And this candidate who is the highest bidder definitely is not the youths, because it doesn't have resources. And you see, even right now, even the conversation that has been there, that the Gen Z factor will play high in the coming election. But now it's really slowly shifting away, because you look at the current opposition formation, the larger composition of their meetings, they're the Gen Zs and the young people. Where is now that conversation whereby we said we will not support these older people who have failed this country, but we will stand for ourselves. So the level of poverty amongst the youths is the greatest undoing that we shift to support the people who are not supposed to be in power.
Question then is, what does the nation want? And what does this large demographic upon which responsibility is placed, what do we actually want? And I think we can continue to have conversations to answer that question. Thank you, both of you, for being here this morning. Francis Njoroge is the head of public policy, IC Law LLP, and CPA Brian Nabiswa, finance consultant. We've been having a conversation on the youth perspective this morning, conversations that cannot stop. It's been a heavy week, folks, and from all indications, the next coming days will be just so. We'll be here to continue in this discourse, and thank you for keeping it the Situation Room this week. Getting into the weekend, have a lovely one. Take care of yourselves and of each other. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.